Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to what it's like to come back to the Elder Scrolls Online after 5 years. Now, I want to start by giving you a little bit of context about my career as an ESO player. I started playing in 2015. I played for most of that whole year, and so I didn't play during any of the buggy mess that this game was during its release. And since that time, I've come back once or twice, around when Somerset and Morrowind came out respectively, to check out some of the new changes, but I didn't stick around very long. And since that time, I've played a lot of different games, including World of Warcraft and a lot of other MMOs that have colored my impressions about the Elder Scrolls Online and how ZeniMax Online, has really kept it alive. Before we dive in, for the most part, I want to say I mostly have a positive impression, so if you're looking for a rant, this is probably not it. I'm hoping that this video can be a good reference point if you're thinking of coming back or just want to see what I have to say about the game since that time. One of the first things that both new and returning players get involved in the Elder Scrolls Online is PvE. Elder Scrolls has always had a problem of trying to cater to the casual Skyrim co-op experience that people want to see in ESO versus an endgame MMO experience. In the 5 years that I've been gone, I've noticed that the variety of PvE experiences for players at both ends of the spectrum has really increased. There's a lot more overworld content and a lot more expansions, which I'll dive into later, but also a lot of new added trials, veteran dungeons, and other pieces of challenging content, as well as content that's accessible for a player that's somewhere in the middle or wants to do both ends of the spectrum. And so I'm very pleased with the variety that ZOS has been introducing. My only complaint about this is that sometimes it's ambiguous about how difficult a particular piece of content is. For example, if a player's queuing for a veteran dungeon, they might be able to breeze through it naked, or if they get placed into a DLC veteran dungeon, they might struggle and have to have a fully leveled group to be able to push them through, as well as having researched in depth all the mechanics, and the game has no way of telling you this up front. In the end game, one thing I was not pleased to discover was that the metagame is still very strong. In general, most players are expected to conform to the meta when queuing for endgame content. Some of the positive things that are within the PvE environment, firstly, is housing. If you want to dive right into housing, a lot of the higher end houses I've actually found to be very expensive, and some of them do cost crowns to obtain, with the highest ones costing an equivalent of $130. This was really shocking to me when I first found out, and frankly turned me off from my desire to collect all the houses and all the castles in the game. I'm sure a lot of players have found a lot of joy in decorating houses. I personally really enjoy my guild's headquarters and find myself going there a lot. But with the amount of gold that has to go into making a nice house, it's something that I found myself not wanting to invest time into. The social aspect of ESO is probably one where I've seen the most improvements to this game so far. The first one being the new Guild Finder feature, which I think is amazing. It's very much needed and really helps make it so much easier for players and guilds to find each other depending on the preferences that they both have. I've used it to find a number of the guilds that I'm currently in, and I can see how it would make creating a new community in ESO so much easier and so much more accessible. Having made a guild when I played in 2015, this was one of the hardest things, was having to advertise for it in Zone Chat and really struggling to find players to join. So now with the Guild Finder, it's so much easier to have an application and immediately have some transparency that's open to everyone at the same time. Finding a guild is super important because unfortunately I found that some of the long-term players that I played with in 2015 are gone. And this shouldn't be too much of a surprise. It has been 5 years, but a lot of those old memories unfortunately have to be relived with a new set of different people. The one Tamriel update that did come a couple years ago was so much needed, and essentially what this was it now allows you to crossplay on your own platform with people from other alliances and other levels in any zone. Effectively, for overworld content, this means that the pool of people you can play with now is much, much greater. You can play with almost anyone that plays in your same region and on your same platform. This comes with a few leveling changes as well, and a few differences in the leveling process that I think were much better than the pre-existing Cadwell Silver and Gold systems. So I'm very happy about that change, and that was probably one of the most needed changes to the game compared to how it was like in 2015. And because of that, the game does feel really alive. I always see people running around, not just in my faction's capital, but also wherever I'm questing or whenever I'm doing any type of content, there's always someone else in the delve or in the public dungeon with me, which wasn't always the case even in 2015. Because of the Guild Finder and the One Tamriel update, as well as a few other quality of life updates, it's now a lot easier to find other players for dungeon and trial content compared to 2015. I think this was very much needed, as I remember always struggling to find other players to do my daily pledges with, so I'm very happy about that. Unfortunately, there are still some toxic people in the community, and unfortunately there's not a lot to be done with any MMO out there. However, Elder Scrolls seems to still have its tension between new players and veteran players, or PvE players and PvP players. So if you're looking for an update to the community, unfortunately there's not much of an update to give. One of the biggest changes to the Elder Scrolls Online is the amount of DLC and new expansions that are available for players to buy or subscribe to. The first thing I noticed when playing through some of these new questlines is that the quality is amazing. The stories are some of the most riveting ones in the entire game of Elder Scrolls Online, and the visual appeal of some of the zones is really unmatched. So I highly recommend checking out some or all of the new DLCs in terms of the overworld story content. There's really so much to choose from, and now really all of Tamriel is open to the player, even greater than the extent than it was in the base game. The only thing I found myself disliking when it comes to the new DLC and expansions is the replayability and variety of content within each individual pack. It seems like each pack really tries to cater to both PvE and PvP players, or to new players and veteran players. One change that I could suggest making is to have a pack that's exclusively focused towards PvP or PvE or a certain type of content, for example the Imperial City pack when it first came out. The more recent packs that have been aimed at players in general seem to be a bit too broad to really appeal to any one type of player. Another thing I noticed, which is both good and bad, is that all the content is relevant at the same time. Unlike World of Warcraft, which has content and expansions that become obsolete as new ones come out, all the content in ESO is playable at max level at any point in time, which adds a lot to the variety of content you can go into at any point, but also means it's a lot more overwhelming for new players to get into. So there is both good and bad with that. If you're looking for a time to jump into Elder Scrolls Online, either again or for the first time, there's also the Greymore pack on the horizon, which takes you into Skyrim, into Solitude, and other parts of Western Skyrim, including Blackreach. So now might be a good time to jump back in, especially if you're nostalgic for Western Skyrim. If you have not played The Elder Scrolls Online since 2015 like I haven't, you might be surprised to find some changes to the payment model that ZeniMax has made since that time. I started playing when The Elder Scrolls Online first went buy to play, and I initially signed up thinking I was not going to pay another dollar. I was extremely wrong about this, as eventually they did shift to that DLC model that I mentioned earlier. At first, the DLC was a very bad deal in terms of it was very expensive up front with $15, $20, or even more dollars per pack. The pricing for that is still the same, but the ESO Plus subscription is now something that ZeniMax heavily pushes. If you subscribe to this, you get all the DLC content included, as well as a monthly allowance of crowns and other quality of life features such as the craft bag. This subscription is very controversial though. It does not include any of the expansions that have come out until they're added to the free-to-play list, which is very controversial as then you have to pay money on top of that monthly subscription you do pay. Also, it's questionable about whether or not those quality of life updates should really be included for all players for free or just made available within the Crown store. Overall, I'm not complaining about the subscription too much, as I find the pricing to be pretty accessible and similar to what it was when I played WoW. When I first started playing The Elder Scrolls Online in 2015, I did PvP content pretty much full time, so PvP has a special place in my heart. The biggest change that's been made is the implementation of the Battlegrounds, which are a 4v4v4 combat mode. I've had a lot of fun in this mode, whether it be as a healer or support character, helping my team to victory, or as a DPS character, getting an extremely high kill ratio. There's a lot of variety in this mode, even though it is simple and easy to get into. My only complaint is that I really wish there was more opportunities to play a seasonal mode or to get a competitive ranking, to add a little bit more repeatability beyond just getting PvP ranks that are the same as the Cyrodiil ranks. The PvP itself in Cyrodiil arguably plays the same way as in the base game. If you really enjoyed the PvP in Cyrodiil, you might be happy that the formula has not been changed. There's been a few additions, such as new campaigns or new Daedric weapons, that can sometimes change the way that the PvP plays. For example, in a no CP campaign, your champion points are not affected, so beginners are in the same playing ground as veteran players. With Daedric weapons, you're able to sometimes siege a keep in mere seconds, meaning that huge skirmishes break out for which faction can gain possession of those Daedric weapons. So there you have it, folks. Those are my main thoughts about some of the changes that have been made to ESO since 2015. I really want to hear what you guys think about some of these, so please let me know in the comments below and leave a like if you want to see more ESO content. I'll see you next time.